Those of you who have been here in the past have had a chance to go to the breakout that Dr. David Derezotes has done, know that this is going to be a real treat. And we want to make sure that he had a chance to do a general session this year. And I'm guessing you're going to, yeah. So he's going to roam a little and get you involved. Dr. Derezotes is a professor of social work. I've been here longer than you probably. No, you've been here longer than me. Since I got here in '85. Yeah, see. So he's been here at the University of Utah for a long time. Just a favorite of students. He's involved in a lot of organizations with the spirituality groups and so forth, and he'll probably tell you a little bit more about that, but it is with a great pleasure to introduce Dr. David Derezotes, my friend and a great colleague.
Thanks, Glenn. So what's the difference between me and you? Pretty much, yeah. And I always get uncomfortable, when I'm in the, don't you a little bit, when you're in the therapist role or the healer role or the teacher role? It's a little bit weird because, and I'm a guy too, I'm a white male, right? So I have privilege, and being announced like that too, there's a wall that goes up, isn't there? And most of the time what we call education amounts to what? Because we all are traumatized by the educational system, don't you think? And it's not like a conspiracy, it's just institutional abuse that we've co-created for a long time, don't you think, since kindergarten? So what we call education is what? Programming. I actually agree with you. That's another, yeah. About what? How to think, how to act. And I mean, I get excited. I like doing this kind of facilitation. It's fun for me. But I want to explore as an equal, and I'm still trying to figure out how to do that over all this time. But one thing I do is I get in the middle like this, and if I sat down, you couldn't see me. And so I'm trying to model what I found works for me as a teacher, and I'll use the word healer, is to try to be an equal, even though we're all different in some ways. Do you know what I mean? Like to be a learner with you. So what does educate mean in Latin? Some of my students, you guys have heard this from me before, so you should know. Students, do you remember what educate means in Latin?
To draw out.
Very good. Yeah, yeah. So, do you believe that? Is that what an educator does? I said you always say something profound. Does an educator draw out?
If they're good, yes.
If they're good? What's that mean?
They don't. Education to me involves the original. Educate you so much to a point where you learn how to take care of your parents and society. But if an educator's really good, he draws things out of you to help you learn and function better.
He or she does that, and so that suggests that wisdom is where?
Already ingrained in you.
Yeah, and do you believe that? So where does that come from? Is that biological, or do we learn? Is it genetic or learned? This isn't a test question. What's your belief? Are we born with it, or do you learn wisdom, whatever wisdom is?
That comes back to nature and nurture. Which one you ever believe on that? I believe in both.
Yeah, me too. It's probably a combination. What do y'all think? Is wisdom more nature or more nurture?
Don't. Oh, I would say probably more nurture.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm not sure, but I do believe that people have wisdom. In fact, your show was a lot about wisdom, wasn't it? Body wisdom, right? You had such a great workshop, and you were teaching us about, educating us about the idea of paying attention to our bodies, right? Do you want to say anything about that? You're probably talked out.
Just the idea that there's body wisdom, and we can become more aware of that by learning to recognize its signals that it gives us.
Do you have body wisdom?
I'm have some. I'm sure I could have more.
What do you mean I could have more?
As I learn to tap into it more, recognize what it's telling me instead of ignoring it.
So are you saying that gaining body wisdom is more letting go of something than trying harder?
It's an interesting question.
That's a great response. When you don't know, when you're a healer and you don't know what to say, I think it's great to say, that's an interesting question. Like that, right? And actually, I really like it. My favorite therapist often said he didn't know, Jim, and that helped me a lot. Do you guys ever say, can I say you guys? Is that offensive? Okay. Is it offensive to you if you have a healer that says they don't know? Why? Because they're honest. Who said that?
Because they're honest, and then it makes you trust them more.
How do you feel if somebody says they know everything?
They're a liar.
Yeah, because I don't know everything either. So I need a healer who's imperfect, right? I really liked the forgiveness show, didn't you? The one yesterday. I didn't go to the one in the evening, but I thought he nailed it, and it was a really simple idea. And I think that, and I got this from my favorite therapist too, that the best healing is sort of like helping the person go in the direction they're already going in already. And I take that seriously as an educator, and I do talk therapy, as social workers do that, like trying to support the direction the person is going in anyway. So this show is on what did we get out of the conference and where we want to go. And I have a special goddess of the whiteboard who's volunteered. Do you want to make any comments before you go up to the front?
That's an interesting question. No.
You know when your students are learning when they give you back the same shit you give them, right? Okay, so now we're going to advance we're going to see if this works. Okay, so we're going to talk about individual, institutional, and community transformations, like where we want to be, sort of in response to everything that we've been educated about, drawn out about in the conference. And so the first question is, what is individual transformation? Does anybody want to take a stab at that? There's no right answers. Let me go to someone who I know has great wisdom. And hi. What do you think of when you think of? And we've talked a lot. I think someone said to me earlier, I was sitting with Rick, and Rick said to me, we probably have focused more on individual transformation, so maybe we won't spend as much time on it, but when you think of individual transformation, what do you think of?
Change within yourself versus the community, or?
Okay, so change it within myself. Now, I heard from somebody over here that there's a pushback around the word transformation on campus, right?
Yes.
And you don't have to go into the details, but what's up with that?
Well,
Why don't we like that word?
well, I think there was a debate about race here on campus and diversity, and some people think in the state legislature, transformation is a bad word. And I think when we talk about like ethnic studies and gender studies, they want to be known as a school for cultural and social transformation. I think it's going to be very interesting to see what happens for the non-Hispanic white population here in the state of Utah when they hear the word transformation.
Okay, so we all know what individual means, but transformation, it's more ambiguous, and also there's reactions we have to the word, right? And what we're hearing is that there's some negative reaction. Can anybody help us understand that? Why do we have a negative reaction to transformation? Good.
Because people and groups can feel threatened by change.
What has to change for me to think or do something new?
I have to see the what's in it for me. I have to see potential benefit.
Anything else have to change? If I'm doing something new or thinking something new, what has to change?
I also have to believe that it's possible.
Okay, I agree. Anything else?
I have to give up something.
That's what I think. That's what we were talking about earlier. I guess this is an old Buddhist saying. A friend of mine told me that in order to get new furniture, you have to give up the old, right? So transformation, what do I have to, oh, now here they go again at the university. And I don't have much already anyway. My income hasn't gone up. And now those people are coming in. And we're going to talk about community, what's happening locally and globally before we're done today. Because I'm interested in whether you can help me understand how to link this business of integrative health, which could be very about just me, right, with what's going on globally. Is that of interest to any of you? Otherwise, to me, what's the point, right? Because I could be all happy and healthy in my little house somewhere if I have one, but unless the world changes, I'd struggle with that, or I won't feel good in the last day of my life, right? Okay, so transformation means something has to die. Carl Jung, I thought, said it best. He was writing about suicidal folks, and we really struggle with suicide, don't we, in our culture? I mean, he said, when someone's suicidal, there is a part of them that needs to die. It's really different than the way that I think we deal with mental health today, where we, at all costs want to keep people alive, and we take away their right to sort of look at this in a different way, or even talk about it. Maybe there is something that needs to die in me. Maybe there's something that needs to die in what we call medicine, right? Maybe there's something that needs to die or change in how we think about the world and how we interact in order for us to still be around. So, yes, sir.
What Jung also said about your dreams, throw your dreams ahead of you and walk into them. So it's up to the individual to pursue their dreams even against society.
I like that. So I'm not trying to copy I didn't get to go to the cool workshop about writing. Who did that workshop? I've heard so many good things about it. I heard so many good things about it, but I went to this other one. But I wanted to do some writing too. Is that okay with you? Yeah. Yeah. So I just heard that people really liked. Do you want to make a comment about that?
Good.
Okay. So what I want to do is, I read a long time ago that in, maybe you've heard this, like around 1100 AD in Japan, the way they would do poetry is it was always communal. And what would happen is the person who was carried over from the last meeting as the poem they wanted to carry over would write a poem and read it out loud, and then everybody else would write a poem in response. So when I say write a poem, do any of you go, oh shit, I'm not a poet? Or do you have that kind of, how about if we frame that as institutional abuse? It's just like, if I said draw a picture, a lot of you will be like, I don't know how to draw, right? Well, what if we thought about, like, all of us, and I'm sure you talked about this in your workshop, right? Isn't everyone an artist? Do you believe that?
I do. I think a lot of it gets suppressed when we're kids.
Yeah, for sure. And it's really sad because there's a good intent there, right? But I think we get beat up for our expressions. Is that how you see it?
You're just making me talk now. I actually really enjoyed the writing workshop, and I was surprised at what came out of me, because I don't always consider myself a writer, and something beautiful came out. So
that's what I heard. All these people said they had cool expressions. So what I'd like to do is read a poem that I wrote just like 20 minutes ago, and then and the rule is that you write a poem in response on a piece of paper, but there's no rules about the poem. Like, there's no limit to how many lines. It doesn't have to rhyme. It can. It doesn't have to be a certain anything. Okay, it's just, and the reason I like poem rather than prose is because poetry doesn't pretend to represent reality. It's a metaphor. You know what I mean? Like, when you write a poem, you're not saying this is truth. It's capital T. It's just my truth, little t, right now. So are you willing to just play with me for a minute and see what goes? And then we'll share it, because social workers like to share everything, right? So I'm going to read you the poem I wrote, and then I'm going to ask everyone to please just silently write a poem in response, and then we're going to work with those poems. And this is about individual transformation first, okay? Here's mine. Late winter snow. Ground warming slowly. Can I love myself right now? And I'm asking you to write a poem. It doesn't have to respond to that, but it can. So we're all just writing a poem. There's no rules. No one's going to grade it. And what we often discover is when we write, for a lot of us, something comes out different than when we speak. .3 minutes left. Another minute. And it's okay if I'm not done in a minute, because a cool thing about a poem, when I took a poetry class in San Francisco, the teacher said, everybody writes one poem in their life, and you keep working on it your whole life. And that just was a cool idea, I thought. You write one poem, and you just keep working on it. So as we finish up, I'm just going to model what I want you to do at your tables, or if you're sitting along the wall with your friends. So I'm going to ask, I know this really excellent English professor, so I thought I'd ask Deanna, who's also a yoga teacher, to read your poem. Are you willing?
Sure. It's a very short poem.
That's fine.
What would it take to thaw? What is lost when something grows? Who thaws? Who dies? Who grows?
So what did I do or not do when she read her poem? Yeah, I didn't do what? Yeah, I didn't analyze or grade, right? Now, we always talk about, in mindfulness, we talk about non-judgment, but of course we judge all the time. But I can sit on my judgments and not express them, right? I can't not judge inside. That's not how my mind works. Maybe yours can. But I can listen for understanding. What do most people in the United States do when someone else is talking? Because we're going to share our poems in a minute. Let's say we're going around the table, and you read your poem, and then it's what are most other people doing when she's reading her poem?
They think about what they're going to say next.
And that's fine to worry about that, because that's just what we do, right? But I can sit on that a little bit, can't I? Gently, and listen for understanding. It sounds really easy, but it's one of the two parts of dialogue that's really difficult, to listen for understanding. It means being present, like I'm here right now listening to Deanna read her poem, and just maybe even feel it in my body too, what she's feeling in hers, right? And the other part of dialogue is speaking respectfully. So what I'd like to ask you to do is to try that at your tables. If you just got 2 people, that's fine. If you got 6, just let people take turns reading their poems out loud. And then if you're sitting on the wall, why don't you just please share with the person to your left or right, okay? A few more seconds, please. Okay, stop being intimate. Go back to normal superficiality. Stop. Okay, so Dr. Richardson has a comment.
So if we read these and we were feeling some meaning, then we didn't have anything to say if we couldn't comment on them.
But should we do that now?
Comment on them?
Yeah.
I don't know if that's legal.
Glenn, since when have you ever listened to me? So would you like to discuss it more? I'm curious. Let's talk about it as a group, and then we'll go back to small groups in a sec. Would someone like to comment on what it was like? I heard you say something. What was this like for you?
Mine was happy day, happy way, to be healthy, appreciate the day. That's how I feel. I've had a fabulous day. Thank you.
And I heard you say that was fun doing that.
It was really fun. Thank you. Like I said,
How come it was fun?
I like to be joyous. I like to be silly. I have very childlike mannerisms, and this was a great way to express that at the end of my day.
Neat. Yeah, I like being child. How about over here? Did anybody have an experience you want to share?
I think we all just enjoyed the process, having to, like you said, pull that out of ourselves and really think about what it means to us personally. I think we all agreed that it was a very individual, intimate thing, personal thing that isn't going to be wrong just because you're an individual. It just gets more meaning the more you share it with other people.
Would someone like to read their poem out loud? Okay.
Here I am, who breathes me into this moment, and into the next moment, and the next, and the next. And toward what noble purpose, before I am breathed no more?
Someone rose their hand. Rose their hand? Rised? What's the proper?
There's no judgment here. I think, I hope. So I'm reading my poem, is that what I'm doing? Okay. Why do I wait when I know I can be great? Am I afraid of what I can one day be when changing my dreams can set me free? Time will pass whether I decide to be my best self today or tomorrow, so today I will be me.
Thank you. Did you want to volunteer your poem, sir?
Well, yes, I do. So part of my poem is just the napkin it's written on. It reads, "Poetry shows up in the most ordinary of objects."
Anybody else want to read theirs?
Okay, I titled mine Surrender. The earth cradles my steps. Heavy is the soil, soft is the sky. Gentle winds wrap me up. I am reborn, giving to gain, loving to live.
Isn't it fun to have like older people and younger people in the same space? And I really like it that, Glenn, I'm assuming you encourage your students to do some of the workshops, but I thought they were really great. You know, and it's neat because they're like the future and they see the world differently, I think. And yet, you know, I like to believe that we have some wisdom. maybe we do, you know, from all those years that we've been around. Anybody else want to read their poem back here? Really? Do you want to illustrate?
Late winter snow, ground warming, seeds planted, growth, happy heart.
And let's see Glenn's to see if it was similar.
It was, does the warmth of spring that stimulates the flowers and trees also enliven my spirit to blossom and flower. So she was saying that, and I was saying that.
Thank you. Do you feel like kind of a mind melt kind of thing going on?
No, that's coincidence. No, I know. It was totally.
Do you believe in coincidence?
Of course I do.
Anybody else want to share their poem? I wanted to show you a couple ideas, and maybe we could talk some more in small group. When I think of individual transformation, these are a couple things I wanted just to offer you to see if any of them fit for you. What is consciousness? I heard a couple of people use that word. Pardon me? Awareness. Consciousness is awareness. That's half of it for me. What kind of awareness? Like I could have brutal awareness, like, oh, there's another guy who's scalp dominant, you know, and I could have judgmental thoughts about it if I have self-hatred about my head or something, you know. So what kind of awareness?
Not only yourself, but also others.
Okay, so awareness of myself and the world around me, and what kind of an attitude is in that awareness for you?
A benign attitude, a kind attitude.
I like that. A really good friend of mine says reverent awareness. I've always liked that term. Consciousness is reverent awareness, right? No right answer. And I really like Eckhart Tolle's work on this. For me, he's like, speaks really clearly. I have references at the end of just my few slides, but his book, A New Earth, and the idea that, that we all can move towards a reverent awareness. And he also writes about ego, as does Pema Chodron and Krishnamurti, who are the other two people I'll quote today. So what is ego? I heard a couple people, didn't you mention ego during our shows the last 2 days? Does anybody want to take a shot at defining ego? What is ego?
How you conceive yourself. In the little ego sense, kind of how I'm separate from you and how do we compare and what are, who's cool and who's not. Maybe in the large ego sense, it has to do with who am I really and how do I operate from who I really am. You need to have a healthy, ego's not all bad. You need to have a healthy ego in order to function.
I like that too. That I like that word temperance for ego. Temperance in Latin means the right mix at the right time. So that because I don't know if I'd be human without ego. Do you agree? Is ego part of the machinery
of being a human? I think Lee got us off to a great start. When I think about ego, there's the concrete ego of the child that identifies with primarily his or her body. It's kind of, we call it egocentric. But then the ego of an adult, it starts to identify with family, community even, and maybe even beyond that, ego can identify with, greater and greater wholes and hold more and more in its compassionate embrace. So I think of ego as something that evolves and expands.
Does ego have anything to do with community violence? Do we see ego showing up in our presidential election debates? And I think I'm just the same as them. I mean, I think I'm more like Donald Trump than I'm different. I think we're all fairly similar. Like I could be doing the same thing. I mean, I don't know if I had a lot of power. Maybe I would. Maybe because I can feel my ego. Doesn't yours, when people clap for you, doesn't your ego get a little bit bigger? And it just seems like we're susceptible to ego. But and does ego have something to do with global warming or climate change? Does ego have something to do with why we don't cooperate, as humans? So individual transformation is related, isn't it, to community and institutional. So the transformation of privilege and power. Something has to die for something else to grow. So I'm not sure I cannot be a white male, but I could use my privilege differently, right? I could let die some of the ways that I abuse my privilege, right? I could. And if I don't abuse power, then maybe I could be empowered. What's the difference between power and empowerment? Or are they the same thing? Yeah.
My look on it is power you take and empowerment you're given.
Thank you. Anybody else take a shot at that? Power and empowerment.
I think it has to do with whether I conceive it as power over something or other, or whether it's power with to somehow create something good.
I was fascinated during the conference about how many different ways health was defined. Did you notice that? And they all seemed cool. Like I'd write down the one that the person just said, and then somebody an hour later would say something. Somebody said it like it was giving up defenses. I forget who said that. I thought that was really cool. But then somebody else was talking about it in a different context. So we can think about power and empowerment in different ways. For me, empowerment is knowing what I feel and think and be able to express it, nonviolently, assertively. And then from I to we, and I won't elaborate on that. And what I'd like to do is move to institutional transformation. Okay, that means like where you work. And we heard a little bit about where we work, didn't we, in the first conversation, right? That Michael did, right? He talked a little bit about trust and money and stuff like that. So I want to ask you, if you could change where you work, what works for you at work and what doesn't? What do we need to let go of in the way that we work, how we create our institutions, whether we work at the U. Glenn and I have had heartfelt conversations about what works at the U and what doesn't, right? What works for you where you work? Some of you are in the medical field, right? Everything in the medical field isn't groovy. You work at a really groovy place, but I'm sure the politics there are sometimes weird, right?
Oh, yeah. Even pathological.
And we all know, right? So what is it about us humans that when we create a work environment, all this ugliness can happen too? I mean, I'm a Peace and Conflict Studies director at the U, so someone talked me into joining the Peace and Conflict Directors Organization nationally, and they're really mean to each other. Like they send, the latest thing is fighting over which is more pathological, to vote for Bernie or Hillary. And you can imagine all the arguments around that. Like people that vote for Bernie hate women. Someone actually said that, who's a director of a Peace and Conflict Studies program. But the other day, I was driving home from somewhere, and on NPR, some of you may have heard this. They were talking about murderous people in San Diego Beach fighting over sea lions. Did you hear this on NPR? You did?
I heard a little bit of it, tell it.
Yeah.
Where they talked about the pictures or the images of it.
Yeah, and people were arrested for threatening to kill each other because they were fighting over the sea lions, right? So we're all capable of being really nasty to each other. What's up with that, and can that transform? Could we create workplaces that are not like that, so we don't create unnecessary suffering? And what is the greatest work-related stress for most people? The Europeans have studied this more than people in the United States, but there's one kind of stress in work that's greater than all the other stresses combined. What would your guess be that is?
A person's given lots of responsibility without the power to carry it out. A kind of middle manager stuff.
Okay, so let's go with that. And then when you have too much assigned to you, what makes it even worse in relationship to how you're treated by others?
If you have too much assigned to you where you can't get it all done, then judgment, criticism, you're not measuring up, you're not making it.
Think of a word for that. What's that called? When people are nasty to you, abuse power against you, don't listen. coercion. Can you think of another name? What do we call it when it's on the playground and it's in 4th grade? Bullying. Yeah, workplace bullying is the greatest stressor. Did anybody here ever experience workplace bullying? It can happen from a colleague. It can happen from someone with more power, even someone with less power, right? Why do we do that? Can we transform that? Anybody have a thought? I'll ask my social work students. So you want to eliminate workplace bullying, and you're such a good sport. I've been hard on you all day today. So you want to eliminate workplace bullying. What would you do as an experiment? You get a $100,000 grant to eliminate or reduce workplace bullying at the university, let's say. How would you start?
I would start with not pressuring people to answer a question.
So not pressuring people. It's a good. Now you said you've never had a chance to say anything at our conference. You've just been the tech guy. So you nodded about workplace bullying. What would you do? What would be your first step in reducing workplace bullying?
Find a consensus on what and define bullying. And then use the $100,000 to use it as severance pay for those who live up to the definition of bullying. I clear them out, basically.
Oh, good. We have some more comments, so I don't have to be coercive.
Probably try to implement a meditation in the morning. So you do the whole, may he be joyful, may he be happy, may he be healthy, and get everyone to do that every morning for themselves, a stranger, someone they don't like, and someone they love.
What if the workplace bullies, who today are really sneaky, like it used to be workplace bullies were more obvious, and now they're like kind of, they know that they're really smart, so they know how to act loving, but as soon as you turn their back, so what if while everyone else is being mindful and loving, they're thinking of new ways to be creepy?
Well, everyone is probably not liking them, so the person that they don't like, they're sending energetic love to them, so they can't really escape it.
So send a tsunami of love towards the workplace bullies. Yes?
I just had a thought to level the playing field. So pay everyone the same, give everyone the same job description and name, or maybe not job description because other things have to be done. But, you know, doesn't matter what your credentials are or whatever, everyone gets paid well in that happy range that they've discovered, and you remove the stigma that way.
So what do y'all think about that? Should all healthcare professionals be paid the same? No? Yes?
My understanding is that Dr. Hunter Patch Adams, he applies that philosophy. The custodial man makes the same money as the surgeon, and they are very happy all there.
But then I would have to, if I was making more money, I'd have to give up something, wouldn't I? But then maybe everybody wouldn't be resenting me. Is there resentment in the healthcare industry because some people make more money than others? You have a comment?
Yeah, think.
Totally, right?
Of course.
It's very weird, actually.
Well, the whole valuation system is so perverse. I mean, how do you justify it? Which leads to the jealousy, which leads to the betrayal and the backstabbing and all of that stuff that goes on. And sometimes, even though, in my experience, everybody is well paid in a particular division, the fact that that person makes $10 more an hour than that person is enough to make them want to kill them in the parking lot.
And I think that's everywhere, isn't it? A friend of mine who's Cheyenne, she's a leader in an organization, and when she took over that leadership position, I asked her what she was going to do, and she said, well, in our tradition, there's two things a leader does. And the first thing is to say no bullying. I thought that was really interesting. The second thing is that there are everyone's equal, you know. So and she says it takes forever, but we have to decide by consensus. You know, that doesn't make everybody instantly happy, but I like the idea also of those kind of structural changes, you know, that I think if you have a strong leader that doesn't tolerate bullying, that really can change the system faster than anything else. But I kind of like, you know, the get send groovy vibes too. I mean, I think that's a good thing too. Yes?
Perhaps providing educational resources where people can learn themselves and their limits, where they can perform the best, preventing burnout and connecting on a really compassionate way So respecting those individual needs.
What is burnout?
Burnout is when, as far as I know,
No right answer.
no right answer. This is a really good question. When people are not able to perform, not just on job, but on life, every other dimensions, because of the extreme stress over time.
Chronic stress or distress is a cause of burnout and something to do with not being able to perform?
Perform or even take care of themselves. That relates to or connected to other dimensions in life outside of work.
Thank you. Anybody else? What's burnout?
When there's a big corporation, it used to be like decades ago that there was sexual harassment and personal harassment based on race or religion or what have you, and now in most big corporations there's a real very, very strong, very structured system in place where people are educated about sexual harassment and discrimination and those kinds of things. So one possible realistic change would be to add education about bullying and a structured system in place that really prohibits and punishes bullying.
Yeah, or at least calls it for what it is. I worry about punishment because it usually doesn't help me. You know, I just get resentful. I don't know. Does it work for you?
It doesn't personally work for me, but that's the system I came from in my corporate life. 3 strikes, you're out.
Yeah, I mean, my ego wants to punish other people that I think are evil, but you know, like I don't want to be punished myself.
Rehabilitate. How about rehabilitate those people rather than punish them if there's those behaviors?
I mean, I think it's a mystery. You know, like how do you really heal that bullying impulse? You know, it's an interesting challenge. So I ask you, well, how do you heal your own? Like, how do you temper your own desire? You know, or does power always corrupt? Is it just inevitable that leaders will always just become self-serving or sell out the corporations, or, you know, or power and control? Right? Is that just inevitable, or is it possible? And it's weird, isn't it? I mean, think about this with me, that some of our leaders that seem to be remarkably able to do that get killed. Like, and why do we shoot people? Why do we shoot people of peace? You know, because it's not the only people that get assassinated, but we seem to do that, don't we? It's almost like it really bothers us or something. Like, you know, that maybe that potential's in all of us, and, you know, we can't stand that. It's too painful to tolerate. It seems even harder to tolerate for us than people that are sort of crummy, you know, we collectively think are. So, yes, sir.
Could it be an unresolvable problem that we have to continually study to constantly keep our mind alert? That we know it's unresolvable, but we have to keep it under focus.
Yeah. Yeah, I really like that idea. I mean, you're probably just a zygote compared to me, but as I get older, I just remember what Jack Kornfield said about symptoms. It's one of my favorite sayings about therapy. He said, what I've realized after, you know, he was one of the first people to go to the Eastern Hemisphere to study, you know, Buddhism and Hinduism, to see what they had to say to Western psychology. When he came back, he said, my symptoms have never gone away. I've just become better friends with them. And I think there's so much wisdom in that. And what I've realized is the same things I was dealing with when I was 20, I'm dealing with now, except maybe I'm just a little bit bigger so I can sit on them sometimes. You know, and I look at them more as friends, more often, not always. Like when I'm anxious, I think, what's that anxiety trying to tell me? Whereas it used to be I'd get anxious about anxiety. You know how that goes, and you build it up, and it gets worse and worse. So I think there's a lot of wisdom in what you just said, you know, and that it's a continual process. It's not like just one intervention and then I'm fixed. So I want to go to this slide just for a second, show you some of the things I thought about with institutional transformation. And we talked about a lot of them: no abuse of power, no bullying, and consensus-based. And we didn't talk about transparent decision-making, but do you like that? Like if there's a decision, we want to know why. You know, like what's the real reason why? Because haven't you often wondered, why does that jerk get $10 an hour more than me? Like what's the real reason for it? You know, couldn't possibly be that they're more talented, right? You know, and all that jazz. So I want to go to the global because I was checking out with people earlier what this little bit of time we have at the end should be about. And a number of people said to me, let's focus on global especially because we haven't talked about it that much. And that's of interest to me too. So when I say community, I mean local and global community. What is local? And I want to try, do you mind doing one more poem? Would you play with me one more time? Because I wrote a poem about the global, and you guys already got the poem thing down, so I'm just going to ask you to respond to this one, okay? Every year, more freeway trucks, more people, wild places dying. What world will be in 100 years? Will we survive? And when you write a poem in response to that, will you kind of think about the whole last 2 days and the wisdom that you may have gotten from that, as well as what I wrote? Just a couple more minutes. We've only got about 8 more minutes together, so we're going to discuss this soon. So as you're finishing up, this time we'll share our poems, please, and then how about do what Glenn was sort of asking us to do last time, which is feel free to comment with each other in a respectful way. You know, so we're going to listen for understanding and then have a discussion for, how about for like 4 or 5 minutes, and we'll come back to the large group for a minute or two, and then we'll all go home. So would you share your poems again, please? And then you can respond to each other if you'd like. Couple more minutes. Okay, everybody, we're gonna pull it together. So stop sharing, stop being intimate. Just go back to superficiality again. And I'm kind of thinking this is the meta table over here, because there was, I don't know if you noticed, it was emanating sort of light. And anyway, they did something really cool, which is
we created the mega poem for this topic, and it happened completely serendipitously as we each, and it was completely random how we spoke our part, and then it just all kind of gelled together in like this really cool way. So can we start? Yes. Okay, with ego gone, a glorious world remains, thrives, and flourishes.
Trust humanity. Truth ultimately sifts to the top. We're moving towards integration. The only question is, what part can I play?
What role can I play from my home now? Onward and upward.
Endless questions. What drives us? What keeps us alive? What motivates us to choose the road that may help us survive?
Survival. We will rise above our mistakes of the past and learn how to raise the vibration of the earth to a higher place, where love is the predominant emotion and hate is extinct.
Any other table want to take a shot at this? Yeah. Some final thoughts. Can we create communities of diversity? We all have hunger for community. I think if I could only give my clients one thing, I would give them community, but not any community, a community of diversity where I can be myself. I don't think we know how to do that. Even in families, we often don't know how to do that. We don't know how to do that so well in our institutions. And we certainly don't know how to do that globally. And we have to learn, don't we? I think we can, by the way. I noticed that even though I really respect my students, especially the younger ones, do not think we're going to survive. I'll ask them, and I'll say, are you hopeful about humanity? No. But another interesting thing is I'll say, well, you're going to have children then? They all go, yeah. Isn't that interesting? Yeah. And then sustainability. Can we create communities that are sustainable so that we could stick around for a while, that we don't wear out our resources? And can we have communities of social and economic justice? So by the powers invested in me by Glenn Richardson and the governor of the state of Utah, we're going to close the conference. As the conference leader, do you want to make a comment before? Is something supposed to happen now? Is there a gong that will play?
Why don't we give Dr. Derezotes a round of applause? Once again, my friend. Oh, jeez. It's such a problem. We can kind of close this together. Judy, we want to thank, again, everyone that participated. I mean, all the speakers basically coming in and volunteering the time, volunteering their preparation, all the partners, social work, College of Health, helped me, and with HIARC, obviously.
Peace and conflict study. The library.
libraries, I mean, oh my gosh, you guys. So, I mean, we really do appreciate everything. Could we maybe take a moment and just, every year when we are planning this thing, the day before, I tell Judy, I'm not ever doing this again. You know,
You told us earlier than the day before.
yeah, actually it was the month earlier. I'm not doing this anymore. Comments about how to make the conference better? We would appreciate some comments about how to make the conference better. Or let me reword that. What do you want to have happen next time? Any interest? Please.
And there's so many good breakout sessions. And each of them's only held once. Now, if you just add one more day to the conference, then maybe you could do this, some of these breakouts again so that you didn't, if there were 2 or 3 you wanted to go to, it was a hard choice.
Okay, so we have this difficult choice because we have 4 breakout sessions. And this is the first time we've ever heard that. Or shall we say that every year, this is what happens. Here's the logic. Next year, we'll come back. We usually have about kind of half of the breakouts are turnovers. And then we have a lot of people coming back. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, it's a choice. If we don't want to run longer. We think 2 days is probably the maximum. Some people are asking, can they just come one day? So we're concerned about going a 3rd day. We'd have to have fewer choices and run them more often if we did that model, which we can consider. But what I was thinking of doing, if you're interested, put on your evaluation form that you wouldn't mind being part of a focus group or get a phone call so we can use your intelligence to help us in our planning next year. So that's one thought. Yeah.
I'm just on fire to do something different than I'm doing. And I don't know how to begin. I just don't know how to live in this world. I feel like that little Ariel mermaid. Someday I'll live in this world. And I don't know how to become a part of this world. And I live out there in that world, in that medical hospital. How does one begin to participate in integrative work? And is there a forum for us to do this job, to help?
That's just what I was going to add, is that maybe a networking situation where opportunities are made available to people who come to the conference. What's available?
Okay, so there's a lot of integrative groups. Is Amy, no, Amy had to go. Amy Locke, who talked earlier, she's created an organization. We've got what used to be SHIM is now HIARC. We have, what is it, the Whole Health Organization. I mean, there's a lot of organizations that are starting to do this. And so now we're creating more pockets. Yep.
Maybe what she's asking is, maybe we could get that in a little pamphlet that everybody gets. So for more information, or if you're interested in helping, like on the back page or whatever, you know, here's Judy's information at Hierarch, here's Amy's information at whatever she's doing. That way the question doesn't even need to be asked. It's there for you if you're interested.
Get involved. What can we do now instead of just wait till next year?
Well, we had monthly meetings for a while, and it died because of they weren't well attended. I mean, all 6 people got together, and you know, but that's okay. But that's something to put on the table. Maybe we could have a list of people who would like to be involved in figuring that out. I know Mike Spigaleri tried to talk about that to some degree, but I didn't understand half of what he was saying anyway. So I'm sure there's a solution in there somewhere. Yes.
Okay, I'll just shout out, I guess.
Yeah, well, go ahead. Shout, do whatever.
So I really appreciate that there's like a diverse. I really appreciate that a lot of the topics that we discuss throughout this conference are pretty diverse, like from mental health to writing and kind of mindfulness And I wish that, we had a little discussion on ecology or like our connection to the earth. I feel that there could be more of that, more like integration of, okay, what's our part on this earth? And so either through more maybe presenters talking about, wilderness therapy or being conscious about our use of the earth and its resources, or maybe like turning it into a zero waste event where we don't have like plastic, anything, or like, we only use compostables. I think that'd be like pretty cool.
Great, thank you. Anything else? Oh, okay, 1, 2, 3.
Well, I just wanted to comment. So I'm an academic advisor here at the U, and I asked if this could be professional development, and I was told no, that it was personal development but not professional development, because by my supervisor. Because when she looked at the website and she looked at it, she saw this as something for health professionals. So I think that's an interesting thing, right? As we're talking about mind, body, spirit, I see that being very connected to my students, but I just don't, I'm thinking like as you're maybe talking about what integrative health is, maybe showing like how this goes into other areas outside of health profession. So like it can work for education as well, and not health education. I don't know. So, because I want to come next year, but I want them to pay for me.
Make sure we get your name, because we can contact you later on that. The other hand was over here.
I'd like the discussion about community to be broader than just about people, but to be about all living things. And I'd like to think about community kind of almost like a fractal.
Okay, good. And it was Alfred. Based on the time, this may be
I like the idea of having maybe a lunch here and a slow cooked lunch where we have little table breakouts, maybe with the presenters from the first day, some other ideas or themes.
Cool. Excellent. Any other comments? Well, on behalf of the university and the partnering organizations, thank you for coming. I appreciate the friendships that are formed. I appreciate the energy, the diversity, and the integration of ideas. I mean, it's really, really a nice thing to come to. So thank you very much.